My name's Andrew Parr. I'm the Chairman, Managing Director of J&FJ Bakers, Oak Bark Leather Tanners in Colyton, Devon. It's a family business, been in the family since 1862, but the tannery's been here a lot longer than that. Yeah, the oak bark tanning process is a very lengthy one. I mean, it is a minimum of 12 months. And in the old days, the specification was 24 months, but that was when everything was layered. The process does take a very long time, but I should be brief. We buy local hides, beef hides, and the first process is the dehairing, which obviously isn't a tanning process, but is very important to the tanning process. So we are dehairing using just lime and water, nothing else, no sodium sulfides, no chemicals, because we're trying to keep the fibre structure as it should be in the hide. So we are liming using the old process, and we dehair using the old dehairing machine, so there's no mechanical action taking the hair off. So you get what we call a nice firm pelt ready for the tanning process. They get de-limed just on the surface, so they go into water for a couple of hours and then they're ready to go into the tanning process. The tanning process is oak bark liquors, as in the name. So we are getting our tans from oak bark. We're soaking it out from the oak bark. The oak bark we've bought in sort of 3 years ago. We dry it for 3 years. We grind it up into pieces about sort of 3 or 4 inches long and then put them into a pit with cold water, like making tea, but cold water. And when that tan liquor is strong enough, it goes up to the tan yard and it'll start the tanning process. The tan yard is divided up into 72 pits, and the strong liquors would go to the top of the tan yard, and each week those liquors are getting pumped back a pit because they're gradually getting weaker because the hides are absorbing the tan. They get to the bottom of the yard where they're still slightly acidic, but are fairly weak, and the new hides will go into those old liquors. And the reason for that is we want the tan to penetrate, and if we put the hides into too strong a tan liquor, all we do is tan the outside and you get a raw middle. So they go into the weak liquor. That allows the tans to penetrate slowly, keeping the fibre structure nice and tight. We don't want any strong liquors, we don't want strong acids which affect the fibre structure. And each week those hides are going to get moved up a pit very slowly into stronger liquors as they go. They're suspended on sticks for the first 3 months, so that means they hang down in the pit, which allows the tan liquor to get all the way around them and gives them a nice even tannage. And then at the end of the 3 months, we take them off the sticks and they go into layer pits, which are deeper pits, and they get layered flat, one on top of the other, with oak bark spread in between each one. So it's like an enormous sandwich, and you get about 80 hides into each pit. And they'll be in that pit for 9 months because it just allows the tannin to soak from the bark into the leather, and it's just absorbed very slowly. And because they're flat one on top of the other, there's quite a lot of weight, so it can't go in too quickly. And the whole process is all about time. So it's just allowing it to seep in so the fibres are kept nice and tight. It is the time process. I mean, the tanning alone takes 12 months, and then you've got to finish the leather. Obviously, if it's going to be shoe leather, that's a question of oiling and rolling, so that doesn't take all that long, 4 to 5 weeks. If it's bridle butts, stirrup butts, it's going to take another 3 months. So you're talking about 15 months, which is a ridiculously long time, really. And you could use 72 pits if you were using a veg tan, using a few chemicals and heat. Mechanical action, you would be able to put through 5 times as much in a year. You work out the economics.
But the product at the end is better?
Yeah. Well, you get this lovely character at the end. We only do full grains. We don't like corrected grain if we can help it. We don't like using pigments. And with a full grain oak bark bend insole shoulder, they're lovely pieces of leather to look at. But if we're doing equestrian leather and we've stained it, you get this wonderful sort of character which will develop in time when it's used, and it'll change colour, but it'll still look wonderful. Because of the liming and the very mild liquors, the fibre structure has not been altered. So we've not swollen the fibres, that they aren't forced apart. They are nice and tight, ideal for shoe leathers, hard wearing. But because our tan knickers are not very strong, you won't get a heavy leather. So it'll be nice, it will wear well, but it'll also be light weighing. It molds to the foot, it breathes, and then on our other side of the business, which is equestrian leather, you get very strong tensile strength. And if you dress it right with oils and greases, which we do here, you get a nice waterproof, again, strong tensile strength. So it's ideal for stirrups, harness and bridles. So oak bark tanning in England has been going on as long as there's any history of tanning. So that must be sustainable. I mean, we are the last one left. We buy mostly coppice oak, which is a type of oak that never grows to a full oak tree. It's a slightly different species. And that is done on a rotation of 20 years. So they'll cut it from the stool down to the roots. And they don't need to do anything with it, the timber people, because it will regrow as it is. And you can come back in 20 years' time and do it again. So it's fully sustainable. The bark, when we finished soaking it, we put onto a bark heap. It breaks down, it goes like peat, used on gardens. The lime for the dehairing used to come from Upline, which is about 5 miles away from here. It now comes from Derbyshire, but it comes from England. I mean, it is one of those things that has always been, we don't really call it, it's not a chemical. I mean, it is quarried from the ground, used on the land. And in fact, our lime, the nice thing about using lime is, one, if it went into the river, it wouldn't poison the river, because it's very much like a chalk stream, good for the water. But it's easy to deal with, so it will settle out. It doesn't stay in solution. So we have a lagoon, we settle it out. And then we own the land around the tannery, we spread it on the land, and it's good for the land, gives us good grass for the cattle, which we also farm. And yeah, that's basically the two raw materials.
Shoemakers looking to buy oak bark tanned leather, what should they be looking for?
It's all skin deep, isn't it? You're looking at the surface, you don't know what's underneath the surface. With an oak bark tan leather, you're looking for a very sort of biscuity brown, light brown colour. You're looking for, if there are any sort of dark colour marks, that might be lime blast. You don't want that. But basically you can't tell from the surface. You can really only tell when you start using it. You damp it back, you cut it, you mould it, and then you'll know whether it's what you want or not. But you do get this lovely edge to the leather because of the tightness of the fibres. And when you finish the edge of the sole, and particularly, you can get it sort of glassy, shiny mirror almost. And that tells you what the fibre structure is, and what sort of wear you're going to get. And again, you get the lightness as well. You're not getting a heavy workman's boot.
What about oak bark in terms of orthopaedic shoes?
I mean, traditionally they were specified. One of the reasons was that they did wear better, and from the customer's point of view or the patient's point of view, they were lighter weighing, and we had no chemicals in the leather, so they never had any sort of reactions, skin reactions, that is, from the leather. It was ideal. And back in the 80s, we used to produce, I think, almost 2/3 of our leather of our shoe leather used to go into the surgical footwear. And orthopedic side, but the specifications were changed, and they wanted to use cheaper materials. So it's still used, but nothing like what it used to be. Yeah, well, here's a slight conflict, because if you're talking about upper leathers, most of those are chrome. And I don't want to do anything against chrome tanners, because they do a very good job. But talking about sort of soling leather, insoling and linings, where you would have the veg tan, again, these are natural materials. They're very comfortable, and the longer you wear them, the more comfortable they become. Obviously, they're cooler in hot weather, and they're repairable, which trainers aren't, and that is very much more sustainable. And hopefully, the world is beginning to understand that.
Lots of people starting out, there's the challenge of affordability in terms of the cost of the materials that they work with. Well,
if you're starting out as a bespoke person, I mean, the difference isn't huge, but the quality is is there. And if you're going to do all that handwork, you might just sort of pay a little bit extra and have the real McCoy at the end. It seems to be an awful waste of all those hours that you take making a shoe and all the effort that goes into it, if you're not going to have something which is the very best at the end.
The other company that everybody talks about in hand-sewn shoemaking is Redenbach.
Mm-hmm.
What are the comparatives between your product and Redenbach for shoemakers?
Our soles would be controversially. They make a leather that some people like. I mean, it is very much harder than our leather. If you read their material, you find it's not a straight oak bark. I mean, it is a combination of cuaracho, chestnut, oak bark. So it's what you call a mixed tannage, mixed vegetable tannage. Ours is straight oak bark. So ours will be lighter than theirs, lighter weighing, but our wear would be as equivalent to theirs, if not better. Hardness in a sole can be sort of deceptive in that you think, well, that will wear forever, but in fact, because you get a lot of slip when you're wearing a very hard sole, and so it will wear quite quickly. Whereas with our sole, you pick up bits and grit and things like that, and that all helps with the wear, and also you don't get the same slip.
How about protecting and looking after your oak bark?
Well, once you've made it into a shoe, I mean, there's not much you can do to an insole or even a sole, because it is what it is. A well-tanned insole and a well-made shoe, as long as you can restitch it, you can go on using the insole forever, because it does last, and it molds to the foot, as I said before, and just gets more comfortable. Obviously a sole is going to wear, so we have to be replaced. It's a niche business, and you have to look for niches. We would hope to always be doing our sort of traditional oak bark shoe leathers, bends, insole shoulders, stiffness, toe puffs. Hopefully that will always be there, because the sort of bespoke market and the sort of top grade factory-made shoes, they do well, particularly in places like Japan, where they have a real sort of interest in shoes, and just hopefully that will spread. People are getting much more sort of sustainably minded, so that hopefully will be good for it. We do calf skins, again locally sourced, and we do some crocodiles and alligators. The alligators come from the United States, and the crocodiles come from Australia. On the other side, bridle leathers, well, sort of the belt market and the luxury goods side is taking more and more of that, which is actually good news, because it's more and more upmarket. So yeah, luxury goods, and we would do, we don't do special finishes, but we would say do special colours if they're aniline and whatever for customers. The breakdown between equestrian leather and shoe leather is literally 50%, of each. From the shoe leather side, the bespoke would take about a third, and then sort of the manufacturer would take 2/3. But then in amongst that, you've got sort of orthopedic and surgical shoemakers taking a bit as well. The actual equestrian use of the leather, so we do a lot of harness backs and that sort of thing, but that would only take about a third. And then the sort of 2/3 would include sort of luxury goods and individuals, and we have a lot of small customers who make cases, leather goods, belts and that sort of thing.
You mentioned that you do exotics. Is that something that you've done all the way along, or are you broadening out your...
I mean, it's where the demand is. We've got a luxury goods customer who buys calfskins from us and other things, and because they want something special, and we've been doing them for some time, but it's only a very small part of our turnover. Yeah, I mean, we get all sorts of requests for people copying old things. We have one chap who buys the raw hides and makes old sort of chariots. Apparently they used to use them for the bottom of the chariots in the days when chariots were still used. Wow. So it's going back some time. Things that used to be used a lot was leather in like trains. They were the doorstops on trains. They used to hold the fire extinguishers in on trains, and people redoing those, come back and say, actually, we need the leather for that. Yeah, I mean, the only leather we do for the motor industry now is for renovation of vintage.
Where do you think the industry's going moving forward?
I'm really the last person to ask about that because we're stuck in a backwater, which has been a backwater for about 300 years. So we're not in the forefront of things. But there has been a swing back to sort of veg tanning, and people are much more conscious of the environment and sustainability. And veg tanning, I mean, oak bark tanning, we can say we're sustainable, but actually veg tanning is sustainable because a lot of things like mimosa, are grown and are sustainable. And I hope that the tanning industry will sort of grasp onto that and make people realise, because the man-made materials are no substitute and in no way are they sustainable.
Do you ever get to see shoes that have been made with oak bark from sort of back in the day?
Yes. I've got some pairs myself.
Okay.
I got one particular pair which was made for me, and they are 36 years old. They're great. Whenever I go travelling, those are the shoes I would wear, because you can wear them on an aeroplane, you can wear them anywhere, and they're just so comfortable. You can go really hot countries, and they are the shoes. Yeah, lovely.